we are embodied souls. We're not just souls in a body. It's not any old body. My body is me. Your body is you. And this has huge implications for modern life. I think especially COVID brought this out. Can we be who we were meant to be if we're spending a lot of our time in a digital world?
Hey there, Mama. This is True Presence, the podcast where Catholic moms like you and me learn to be embodied souls. St. Catherine of Siena said, "Be who you were meant to be, and you will set the world on fire." In the midst of hurry, worry, and social media, we're doing a 180 and focusing on real presence, communion, connection, natural living, and bringing eternity into our hearts and homes. I'm your host, Kelsey, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey guys, are you thinking about giving up social media for Lent this year? If so, I am going to be doing a private podcast to encourage any moms who want to do this, who want to focus on spending more time being present with their families. There's going to be a couple episodes coming out every week throughout Lent, and you have to sign up to get this because it is a private, not a public podcast, which means you need to get the link from me to access it. So I've put the sign up in the show notes below here, and I hope to see you there. This is one of those things where I wanted to do it as a podcast so that you don't get caught up in the, having to open up your browser to get the encouragement, but you don't feel so alone on this journey because it can be really tricky. I think especially as moms, we are often in our homes, not getting a lot of time with friends. And so we reach out to social media for companionship, and it can be really hard to try and do something like this alone. And I want to be there for you. I want to help you with it. So go ahead, sign up below, grab that link, and those podcasts are going to be automatically showing up, and you won't get distracted by having to open a browser, by having to go on social media to get that encouragement. It's going to all be just showing up in your podcast app, one episode at a time, and you can listen to it while you're doing other things, folding laundry, running your errands, anything. So hope to see you there.
Hey guys, you might have noticed the name change. I have decided to change the name of this podcast from Nourishing Mama to True Presence. And the reason for that is that this is really where I wanted to go with it initially. It's about a year ago I decided to start this podcast. And I, for one reason or another, just felt like I couldn't really go this way. And that is to say, I wasn't sure if I was just going to make this a podcast for moms in general or more for Catholic moms. And I decided after starting that I really can't be more general because Catholicism is such a part of where I want to take this podcast in the long run to really dive deep. It's not something that I can make for everybody. Of course, everybody is absolutely welcome to be here, but the underlying core of everything that I am going to be saying is going to come from this perspective that is really focused on the theology of the body. And so much more than that, not just the theology of the body, but especially when we talk about taking care of our bodies, when we talk about ordering our lives, it's a tent that's there. And I haven't really told too much about my background, but my family, my husband and I, we became Catholic about 6 years ago. And we had previously been Anglican. So I wasn't hostile to Catholicism growing up, and just slowly, bit by bit, really found that this was where truth was and the fullness of the faith. And I absolutely loved my Anglican church. I really did. But I just found, again, that there were parts that were missing, that the answers weren't complete. There were big gaps in the theology there. And I found those answers in the Catholic Church. But in particular, the thing that is such a core of this podcast was fully understanding what the Eucharist was and understanding that it really was the true body and blood of our Lord. And the reason I'm talking about this is this really ties into everything to do with this podcast, because what this did for me is it completely transformed my understanding of how God works. That he comes to us as physical food, not just a spiritual presence, not just, like this unifying gift of the Spirit, but actual real food that we actually eat, that actually becomes part of our bodies. And this really absolutely revolutionized the way I thought, not just of my own body, but of all of creation. And it changed fundamentally how I connect, how I relate to everything around me. When you think about the fact that Jesus came not just to save our souls, but also to save our bodies, that when we are resurrected, we're going to be resurrected in the flesh. It changes the way you think about who you are and what you do. I think, C.S. Lewis, he was Anglican, but he had so much of Catholicism in his writing. I remember a letter one of the Screw Tape letters. It said something like this: "Dear Wormwood, make sure you convince the new Christian not to kneel while he's praying, because it's easy for him to forget that what the body does, the soul must do also." So what we do with our bodies does absolutely affect our souls. So something I've been really striving for in my motherhood is to reflect this new understanding of the theology of the body, that we are embodied souls. We're not just souls in a body. It's not any old body. My body is me. Your body is you. And this has huge implications for modern life. I think especially COVID brought this out. Can we be who we were meant to be if we're spending a lot of our time in a digital world? Like, what about the metaverse? Can we be ourselves there, truly? What kind of implications does that have for us? What about social media? I'm not saying these things are inherently bad, but just that we are not in the fullness of ourselves and who we were meant to be when we are there. And that's a missed opportunity. That's a missed opportunity to be present. And I think especially as mothers, one of the things that is so important for young children is that they learn first through the physical world. They cannot grasp abstractions up until a certain age. At least they can a little bit, but it only if it is first something they can understand through the physical world. And so a mother's love cannot be abstract. A mother's love has to be very tangible to younger children. And we see this through them performing the corporal acts of mercy towards their children, feeding them, clothing them, being there with them, connecting with them. But what about as they get older? I would argue that the more we are in our bodies, the more physically present we are, the more deeply we can truly connect. I mean, you can totally see this in degrees. Like when we're doing an online conversation, debating something on Facebook, and our faces are not visible, we're just writing comments. It is so easy to misunderstand one another. Compare that to like the second best thing, which might be a telephone call where we can understand tone and hear those things. But even that, you can still misunderstand things because you can't see someone's face. So then the next best thing would be something like Zoom, where we can be face to face and having conversations. You can get pretty decent communication, but it's still nothing like being in person. I can't hug my mother over Zoom. I can't do the fullness of deep connection over the internet. And so you can see the more we step out of our bodies in our relationships, the more we lose one bit after another, one degree at a time in that communication. I think about this too with our Lord. He came to us in the flesh. He didn't come just in the spirit. That's an early heresy, Gnosticism, where they said he didn't have a real body. And we still see that heresy pretty prevalent today when it comes to the Eucharist, when people say Jesus is just there in the spirit. It is a form of Gnosticism because Jesus is never a disembodied soul. He is, as he will always be, the same today and forever, which means he has a body. So if Jesus is there, he's there in the flesh. The Eucharist is his body and blood. And he is coming to us in person. This is way better than a Zoom call. And that's why, Mass being celebrated on TV is absolutely not the same as being there in his presence. So we want to be like him. And we want to set him as the example to love the Lord our God with all our heart, our soul, and our mind, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Maybe that needs to be with true presence, just like he does for us. Maybe that's what we need for our children, is true presence. I'm going to leave you guys with that today. I just wanted to fill you in on where I'm going with this and give you a heads up on the name change.